Demonstration.
Y'all ready for this?
I got something for your mind, your body, and your soul. Your mind, your body, and your soul.
Welcome back. Dr. Fritz Gillette here with Melissa Nicoletti. We are coming to you live from the studios of WWRL in New York City. Yes, this is the Dr. Fritz Show, and it is for your mind, your body, and your soul. The purpose of this show is to talk about the psychology of everyday life, and what we do every week is try to bring you the information, the people, and the practices to help you live your life to its fullest. So we have an exciting episode. Welcome, Melissa. How you doing?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you.
I'm doing wonderful. Melissa, guess what this is? This is number 50 and the
50?
number 50. We've hit 50 episodes since we started last November.
I don't feel any older. Oh, that's amazing. That's
it's been
great.
50 episodes since we got on the airwaves, and I think they initially wanted me to be just a doctor call-in show to solve people's problems, and I realized, there's a great way we can solve people's problems by actually giving them information that they can use in their everyday life.
And then giving them homework, making them do something.
And then giving them homework.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So here we are once again. So what you been up to?
I'm getting ready for Halloween.
What you gonna be?
What am I going to be? Well, ever since Comic-Con, since we went to, the Dr. Fritz Show went to Comic-Con and we were interviewing superheroes, I fell in love with steampunk. And for those of you that don't know what
Tell me about steampunk, yes.
Yeah, this is Victorian, Victorian era, Victorian styling.
Costume.
With industrial flourishes, I'd say. Very sci-fi meets Victorian dress, and it's extremely creative. Basically, it's a bunch of...
Is there a particular character in steampunk you're going to be?
Personally, no. I just like the idea of gluing gears and sprockets and everything to the costume, and it has a lot of homemade flourishes. But you can't go wrong with it. Mm-hmm. And, it's awesome.
Well,
plus, I put on a little weight this year.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, stop.
You can't tell. You can't tell.
Well, I didn't want to dress in something where everything was hanging out. I know the trend is to flaunt it if you got it, but if you got a lot of it, it's
steampunk it.
Yeah, steampunk it, covered up, put it in the bag.
Well, not to steal your idea, but to piggyback off of that, I was thinking of steampunk as well.
Yes.
I would be kind of in character, but in character of steampunk, I was going to dress up as Freud. How am I going to pull that off?
Really?
Something he would wear.
You carry around a couch?
A couch?
A
no.
cigar?
Maybe a gold watch and the funny glasses.
Yes.
And maybe a cigar.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
You know, I'm just saying. Anyway, so.
How do you feel about your mother? That's right.
So if you're just tuning in, again, this is the Dr. Fritz Show. And if you want to find out more about more information about what we do here, just go to our website, thedrfritzshow.com. There you have our missions and what we're planning on doing, and as well as past episodes, podcasts that you can download, as well as tonight's broadcast. And so what are we talking about tonight, Melissa? How do we get into that?
We are continuing a series of shows throughout the next few weeks. Some of our shows will be focusing on family caregiving. We were looking for a sponsor. Maybe you can tell us how this manifested, actually.
Well, all year long, we've been looking for a sponsor. But one of the things that I want to make sure I do, I'm a licensed psychologist, and I wanted to make sure that whoever sponsored the show would be someone whose vision and their mission were in line with what the show is about. And I'm always saying that we're trying to provide you with information and people that are doing some good things in your community and in your world. And we scored a big one because back in, I think, June, I went to an event sponsored by Emblem Health. And the master of ceremonies, Gregory Johnson, was there, and he was talking about a particular topic. He was talking about family caregiving. And I was just there to kind of network and meet some of the people there, maybe meet a book author. We have one of them here who's going to be on the show with us tonight. And I realized as he was talking about family caregiving, he was talking about me. Every Sunday for the last 4-5 years, every Sunday I joined my mother, who's 24/7 caregiver for my father, who's been bedridden. And his condition is only declining. And every Sunday I am everything from handyman to, house cleaner. I go do the shopping, all the tasks you could imagine. I'm helping my mother manage my father's condition, and even something that most people would squeamish about, I end up even having to change the diaper at the end of the night. And I realize
that's not something that most people actually think about,
right?
Especially while everybody's in good health. as your parents are aging. This is not something that
This
you
is where
really
it's all
actually
going.
picture happening.
And I was touched by what Gregory was talking about. And he had a number of speakers, a group of people from what we're finding out is called the Core. And what's the full title for the Core, Melissa?
this
The
is
New
a
York
test? Okay.
City
Partnership for Family Caregiving Core. This is an army of people helping caregivers stay caregivers.
And one after the other, each of them following along with Gregory's inspirational speech, provided information about different aspects of family caregiving. Gregory defined it, family caregiving, as any caregiving given by an unpaid, non-professional who cares for a loved one or a friend.
I think that's really important too. I don't think we can overstate that. A family caregiver is someone who does things that are unpaid. I'm not talking about the people who are paid
Like the
as
home
caregivers.
health aide,
and
nurses,
these are
doctors.
very valiant, very well-needed people. But the unpaid caregiver, if you pay bills for another person, shop for groceries, pick up prescriptions,
Change the light bulb.
provide transportation, do the laundry, you are a family caregiver. You may not recognize that because you say, oh, that's just what I do for my mom. That's just what I do for my dad. But it ends up becoming a second full-time job. And often these people also have small children or special needs relatives. Right. It's becoming a big burden on not just the caregivers, but the people they work for. You're sneaking phone calls at work. You're absent a lot. They say that corporations lose 17 to 34, billion
$1 billion a year.
Just from.
And what's the stat? There's about 65 million Americans who are family caregivers right
one
now.
In 3.
One in 3. And it's only supposed to rise, that number.
Right. So you don't know, because these aren't people who turn around and go, you wouldn't believe what I'm dealing with, because that's your parent, or that's your loved one who maybe has been injured, or it's a veteran, or it's somebody who needs hospice. It's a lot of people that go unrecognized, or that don't recognize themselves as caregivers. So this is important. This show is for you. Please remember, this is a live show. We want to hear your stories. You are not alone out there. And this series of shows, tonight we're talking about maintaining the physical, but this is a call-in show, 212-868-0975, maintaining the physical for family caregivers. This is the physical things that you can do to help support, let's say, another caregiver.
To keep it going.
So you don't become a casualty. So you don't become someone who requires care. There is support, there are resources, and we have a lot to talk about tonight.
Okay, and the courses series, it is now sponsored by Emblem Health, is about family caregiving. So let's bring the guest in here. First guest we have is Sheila Warnock. She is the author of a book called Share the Care. And Melissa and I, we've been reading the book in preparation of this program. And I think both of us have talked about being, driven to tears a little bit, because the stories in there are very inspirational.
Sheila, I want to welcome you to the show.
Welcome, Sheila.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and have an opportunity to talk to your audience.
We were very excited about your book, and I don't think I got through the introduction without crying. So it's as a wonderful resource as it is, it's extremely moving. The title of the book is called Share the Care. Can you tell us why Share the Care? What made you start this? What made you write this book?
Well, let me put it this way. Being a caregiver and writing a book about how to help caregivers was never in my plans, but life brought me here. I think I'm very passionate about Share the Care because I have lived the experience of being a solitary caregiver, meaning doing it all on your own without any help from anyone, as well as being part of the group of women here in New York City back in the 80s that pioneered the Share the Care system and way of working so that responsibility was shared and nobody burned out.
So when you say share the care, you literally mean sharing the care.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times, possibly it's happened in your life, something's going on and people say, what can I do to help? But you don't know what to ask them to do. And they don't know how to get started or what to do. So Share the Care was written following this experience that I had working with 12 other women. We took care of a mutual friend who had terminal cancer for 3.5 years. And when we got together, we didn't know each other, but we came together at the suggestion of her therapist because our friend was reaching a crisis. And we were committed to making a difference, but there was a lot of emotion in the room that night because I remember coming in being very relieved to see other people because I had been trying to help my friend for so long. And at the same time, I was skeptical because I couldn't imagine what we were going to do. Others were frightened. They'd never taken care of anybody, or they were, concerned about the time that they were going to have to invest.
Do I have to do this all day?
Am I going to, be on call every single day to
Kind of
do
like
something?
trying to eat an elephant.
Yeah,
a
right.
whole elephant by yourself. I think it's easier if you chop it up into little bites.
That's right. So actually, we got started that night, and there were 12 of us, and we figured out the core system of how to rotate responsibilities so that nobody ever burned out. And we did that by working in teams. There were 12 of us, so we had 6 teams. And 2 of us would go to our friend Susan for the week and say, what do you need? Then we would get the others to fill the jobs and provide her with a schedule of who was coming when to do what for how long so she could relax.
So it wasn't the sick person's responsibility to say, I need this, and then organize 12 people. It was somebody shared it, your responsibility to arrange this and get everybody motivated.
That's right.
So
Moving in the
a
right
lot of
direction.
the experience, and I think you mentioned that, and that this was definitely the case for me. I mean, I have a sister, and we both have shared the responsibilities of helping my mother care for my father. But a lot of the experience is very alone and solitary. And many people have asked me from time to time what they could do to help. And what I love about your message and what your book is it actually gives you ideas as what to tell them. Because many times I would think to myself, what can I ask this person for? What could they do for me? And your book actually highlights a lot of the things that we can ask them.
The most important thing to know is a Share the Care group does not have to be organized by the family caregiver or the person that needs the help. It's organized by 2 friends or neighbors or coworkers or acquaintances. And that's the idea of pulling in everybody you know to be a part of this.
Creating a community.
It is a win-win for everybody once they get going, because not only is the person who needs the care supported,
Right.
the family caregiver is
supported.
relieved of many of the mundane things that they have to do, and they have more quality time with their loved one.
Right.
And the individual members in this group gain so much personally.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So, my sister and I, of course, have something to gain from getting people to help us in the process. But what is a friend? Can you talk a little bit more about what a friend is going to gain from being in this process as well?
Well, it depends on the friend. It depends on the circumstance. I remember when we first taught another group how to do what we had done, and we came to this part in the meeting, which, by the way, is totally scripted. You don't have to make up anything with this system. Every single step of the way is detailed and planned out for the 2 people that will organize the meeting.
So your book, Share the Care, shows you in detail how to organize a group to care for someone who's seriously ill.
And maintain it.
And maintain it.
Over time.
So it's not everybody shows up for a month and then they're abandoned.
Over time. We've had groups go on for as long as 6 years. It's amazing what groups are capable of doing when they pool their love, their time, their talent, and their skills. So I remember one woman saying in this meeting what she got out of being in the group for our friend Susan.
Good.
She always wanted to have children. She was married, but they never had children. They didn't adopt. And she had all this nurturing inside of her that had nowhere to go. While she was taking care of Susan, she was able to use that nurturing and got great satisfaction and love from doing it. It gives other people a purpose. We've had people that had their own health issues be part of a Share the Care group, and they did it because it gave them purpose.
Sure.
And people are often looking for an opportunity for meaning, an opportunity for purpose.
And everybody can help. It doesn't matter if you have a child that's 5 years old, they can go and collect the mail or walk the dog or whatever. Or if you're 85, you can still do something that gives you great joy and helps out.
Okay, we're going to take a quick 60-second break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Dr. Fritz Scalette here, coming to you live from the studios of WWRL in New York City. We are 1600 on the AM dial, and we are also streaming on the internet at WWRL1600.com. For more information about this program, go to thedrfritzshow.com. There you'll get information about this particular episode, which is about family caregiving, and information about our guests, links to their websites, and how you can get more information will also be made available. Now, this is a live show, and you can give us a call, 212-868-0975, 212-868-0975, if you'd like to join in the conversation. It's also an opportunity for you to have a voice here and ask us a question or tap into some of the resources that are here. And as an incentive, what are we doing tonight, Melissa?
We are giving away a copy of Sheila Warnock's book, Share the Care. This book is a guide. It's how to organize a group to care for someone who's seriously ill. If you have found yourself in the situation, you are a family caregiver, and suddenly you need to arrange a group to help share the care, so you are not doing this alone by yourself. There are resources available, and this tells you in detail how to do it.
Now,
so what we want you to do, we want to give this to you. 212-868-0975. Call us. Tell us about your experience as a family caregiver. This book is for you, or to give to a coworker or to a friend who is a family caregiver. And a family caregiver is someone who
is an unpaid, non-professional, who shows up to help and
stays.
Thank you, Gregory Johnson, for that definition as well.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, when I first got this book, Sheila Warnock, I met her at an event sponsored by Amblin. She gave me this book. And I've started reading this book, and I've started using this book. And when we talked about giving away a book on the air, I objected. I said, I'm not giving away my book. I need this book.
We brought books that haven't been...
I'm a professional,
yes.
and I need this book to help me with...
We brought books to give away.
We brought some books to give away.
212-868-0975. If you are a family caregiver, if you know someone who is caring for an elderly relative, who is caring for a veteran, who is caring for a sick spouse, somebody who needs help caring, who you know is alone, who needs to share the care, this book is for them. Also with us tonight is Dr. Robin Fenley, who is the advisor to the partnership from the Department of Aging, New York City.
Yep. Hello.
Hello.
So it's great to have someone actually from the government here
The government is here.
The government is here.
Be careful.
To talk about sharing the care and to help us with resources.
The resources are out there. It's just about knowing that and not being afraid to say, I need some help. Some of the research that's been done on unsupported caregiving is really scary. Older caregivers, 60 and older, who have been caring for their person without any kind of support, have a 63% greater chance of dying from their caregiving responsibilities. So it is so important to know that the services are out there. The services are there to help people to provide that care for as long as they can.
Now, how do people access the help that you offer?
Well, here in New York City, 311 is a direct dial, easy to remember number.
311.
Comes to my office, essentially. You'll go through some radio operators, and they send out to the appropriate agency. So what you would need to do is just call and say, I'm a caregiver, I need some help with my family member, I don't know what, something has changed. A lot of times people who may be encountering dementia or changes in cognitive impairment, for their family members, they don't recognize what's happening, and they can just use those buzzwords, and the operators are trained to send them to the Department for the Aging.
Okay, so when we often think about calling into a line, calling into the government, I know people are out there thinking, wait a minute, you mean to tell me if I call 311 to help me work through this situation, I'm going to get to a real, live, empathic person that's going to help me out?
I am here to say, yes, sir, you sure will.
I believe you.
Yes, definitely.
So when we talk about the kind of people who call, the caregivers, who calls you?
You name it. Sometimes it's the older adult who themselves needs help. A lot of times we're seeing there are older individuals that are in their 80s that have lived in these sixth-floor walk-ups, for instance, and they are having difficulty getting up and down for, the stairs for their groceries, etc. Can't go to their doctor visits. So you have the individuals calling themselves. We have family members, spouses. We have people calling as far away as London and Australia because they're family members. They have family members here in New York City that they've usually around holidays, when people, that's when you start talking with one another and,
This
guess
is timely.
We
Yes.
haven't checked in on Grandma in a while.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we see an increase in phone calls usually around that time. And the Department for the Aging actually contracts with a lot of social service providers in the community. And so while we'll get the calls from 311, we'll do an initial assessment, see what the story is. And then depending on what we hear and what their need is, we'll go out to, we'll recommend that they go to a particular community agency and we'll hook them up.
As I'm listening to you and in speaking with Sheila here, I'm thinking about the role of family caregivers, and I'm speaking specifically to our listeners tonight who are family caregivers and think that they're alone. And what we're offering here is resources. And it's amazing to hear that the government has all these resources. Just call us and we'll help you out. This is what we were talking about earlier in the green room, self-efficacy.
Yes. Self-efficacy. The
buzzwords.
psychological concept.
Yes. What is that?
It's really all about what we're doing here. Because self-efficacy, if we can help people improve their self-efficacy, which is really defined as a person's perceived ability, what they think they're able to do in a situation. And what this series is about giving you information and connecting you to people and resources to help you learn about what to do. Now, around the concept or the area of family caregiving, I have friends who are well-meaning that will many times ask me, how is my father doing? Is he getting any better? Well, they're not in it. And they don't know that his condition is slowly declining over time. And what I need most from them is that they ask me how I'm doing.
Oh, so they're coming in and they're asking you about your father. Meanwhile, you've got your own stresses as a caregiver.
Yeah.
Or they say, is there anything I can do to help? No, you pretty much have that covered, but maybe you need a break a little bit, or maybe you need someone to help with
or someone to even understand that often when we're caregiving, we're often helping people whose condition is not going to improve. This is part of the life cycle. And all of us at some point in time or either going to be caring for somebody or cared for ourselves.
Well, that was interesting because Dr. Fenley brought us some research for this show.
Research.
Yes, we love research.
Yes.
And I'm reading that there's over 65 million informal caregivers, and the 65-plus age group is expected to double to 70 million people by 2030.
And here's another. Family caregivers are the backbone of the healthcare system. Without them, what would we do?
Well, it would mean that the healthcare system
would have to take care of these people, and it would collapse if that were the case. So the people who we're talking to right now, who are feeling maybe before this episode, were feeling alone and solitary in this experience. Now they know they can call 311 and they can get some information and they can get a book like the one that Sheila has written. You're not alone anymore. And this increases one's self-efficacy. Now you have information that you can potentially use to help your situation. You now know. I did not know how easy it was to access some of the support that's around me that was asking for help in the past. Go ahead.
One of the goals at Share the Care that we really believe in is getting more people to become involved in Share the Care groups routinely so that it becomes part of the fabric of this country, that we can come together and help someone in need that we know a few hours a week. And if we start doing that all the time, we're going to be taking care of ourselves and not waiting for somebody else to come and fix it.
And that maybe it's part of our collective vocabulary. That
It's
normal for
empowering.
us to take care of each other.
Yeah, it's going back to the pioneer days when if you didn't cooperate and help your neighbor, get the barn up, you weren't going to make it through the winter. So it's that idea.
That's back when communities were really communities.
But tailored for the 21st century, because things are so different. People don't have a lot of time, but they do have some time. And when you add it all together, it's astounding what can be accomplished.
And what we're trying to accomplish with this series is, one, to name it and define it. That's what we've been doing with family caregiving. And then what we're doing right now is talking about it. And the lines are open, 212-868-0975, 212-868-0975. If you want to join in this conversation, if you want to get this book, a book that I'm endorsing and saying, I got to hold on to my copy, but we have extras here. Maybe the author will sign it. We'll be right back in a few moments. Again, this is the Dr. Fritz Show. This is the second show sponsored by Emblem Health in a series about family caregiving. And in the studio with me is a wonderful conversation we've been having from the first half of the show. We've been talking about family caregiving and giving you some good information about what you can do if you're one of the 65 million Americans who every day are working 24/7 to care for someone you love and someone you care about. The lines are open, 212-868-0975, 212-868-0975. You can give us a call if you'd like to actually get one of the books that are being given out today by the author Sheila Warnock. Now we have somebody on the line. We've got Valerie calling us from New York City. Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Valerie.
I know you think I'm just calling for the book.
That's
Oh,
okay.
my goodness.
We want you to.
Oh,
I
good.
do have something to offer.
It's a good book.
First, congratulations on the 50th show.
Yay. Thank you so much.
But I was thinking, is there anything in the book about siblings that don't help?
Anything in the book about siblings that don't participate in the caregiving process?
I mean, in my situation, before my mom, my mom passed in 2009, and I was pretty much alone in the process of caretaking, and would love another 10 years of doing it. But the point is that even when my mom had gotten to the very end where it was really bad, I mean, she couldn't walk, she couldn't do anything on her own. We had to turn her from side to side so she would be able to, and we had to do everything. I mean, everything. Me and a very close friend did everything. And how do you get the other siblings to, it's almost like trying to get someone to stop drinking alcohol or cigarettes. I mean, it's like,
It's tough.
He just would not step up.
Well, in that case, I wouldn't count on him. I would go and look for other people who are going to help you, because you're not going to be able to waste your time and energy trying to change someone's approach, or if they're going to give and help and do all that. Just forget about it, move on, and go where the help is. That's why we wrote Share the Care, because it's a guidebook for friends, neighbors, coworkers, acquaintances, everybody you know, to pitch in and help. Yeah. Now, I was caregiving for my mom alone, and I do have a brother, but my brother at the time, he and his family were living in Japan, and that was back in the 80s when we used to communicate through letters. So he couldn't have been further away, but that was a case where, he couldn't help it.
This seemed to be more of a situation where there are selfish people in this world, and
yes.
And my brother, I believe, has some really serious problems. I mean, but the evidence of his problems was my mom fell in the house and couldn't get up, and he wouldn't even come over.
Well,
I mean, it was really. She called me, and I was able to get a message from my doorman, and it was really crazy. It was, I was out. I wasn't in my apartment.
I realize that there are some real horror stories out there like that, but I think you have to let it go. Because you don't want that eating away at you. Just let it go. Yeah. The Share the Care book doesn't tell you about what to do with your siblings. The Share the Care book was written to bond people together, to work together as a group, and it provides principles, it provides a meeting, it provides forms. Yeah. It's about group work, and that's the focus. So
I agree. It's
Now, Dr. Fritz,
wonderful. Sounds like a wonderful book.
Dr.
I just
Fritz,
know
that's an interesting point that Valerie brings up about a sibling that doesn't want to help.
Right.
I'm sure that's part of the family dynamic. Suddenly, you see maybe your brother sees your mother now. That when she was in that situation, people aren't used to seeing their parents in that way. Their parents are the ones that are the parents. You're the child. Even if you are 50 and your parents are 75, you're still their baby. So they may not have the emotional capacity to
Or you
deal
have
with
to
it.
also recognize that in families, different siblings and different people in the family occupy different roles. I remember when I first brought my father in to be taken care of, the doctor that spoke to me said, it's unusual to see a man in this role, especially in the first few rounds. And I remember him saying to me, he says, you're probably going to be the one that's a primary caregiver. And I remember actually at that point, my sister and I were really working together. She actually had written him a long letter to describe the declining condition. And from the very beginning, my sister and I were working on the case and were very much part of it. But in many situations, geographic reasons or family relational issues means that there may be one or two people that are the primary caregivers.
That's exactly right.
Another point, though, sometimes we forget this. We're not born caregivers. Sometimes we have to learn how to be a caregiver, and that takes the experience and learning with help. And that, again, is why a group caregiving situation helps a first-time caregiver, someone who's frightened to do things in the company of other more experienced caregivers, to help them learn how to be a caregiver. And that's the other point about group caregiving. We're going to need a lot of caregivers.
Now, Valerie, stay on the line. Give Chuck your information. We want you to have this book, and even if it's just to hit your brother with it. But
thank you. Then I will
But there's good
definitely-
stuff in there. Exercises,
I'm
things
working
to
on
do.
forgiving him. I have a lot of resentment issues with him, and I work every day, to try not to
hate him from the core of the
really
depth of who you are.
hate him.
But see, this book and what we're talking about can be very proactive.
If you had had a group to share the care, you wouldn't be having this conversation
right.
now.
You're
Right.
right.
So
I was.
Stay on the line. Give
Right.
Chuck your information. We will get you that book.
But I love your show, and thank you for the book and all the other gifts. And
Sheila's going to
You're
sign it
most
for you.
I have a whole
welcome.
room full of things.
we give away things here besides information. So yeah, stay on the line. Give
I
your information to Chuck. And
Okay.
if for those of you who are listening right now who may have just tuned in, 212-868-0975 is the number you call and join in this conversation about family caregiving. We've been talking about providing you with information, and as a psychologist, I can tell you the more information we provide to you and that you're able to use will increase your ability to deal with the situation when, not even if, but when it's going to become part of your life. So that's what we call self-efficacy. We talk about that, and I think,
Right.
Robin, you had something to say about that.
Right. Well, the self-efficacy, I think we've all been talking about it right now. It's getting the tools. And sometimes the tools is just feeling confident in your ability to provide the sort of care that's needed. And as Sheila was saying, sometimes you learn, it's learning on the job. You are not automatically, born with this knowledge. But as the caller was saying, it is so very, very common that you can have a whole, 15 siblings, and there's going to be one who's going to be the identified caregiver, regardless. Or you can have one who's the caregiver on the East Coast, and then the golden child comes over from the West Coast, and everything you've been trying to do with your parent here on the East Coast goes right out the window because the golden child has arrived. It makes it very, very difficult. So to have that support and to know that what you're experiencing is normal, it is something that caregivers experience, a common experience, which is, again, to know that the supports are out there. So that 311, do call it, and we can guarantee that you will have some responses to your particular situation.
What kind of calls do you get, Dr. Fenley?
And a wide range of calls.
What do people need help with as caregivers? What do they call the government for?
Well, interestingly, people often think, we need a nursing home for my mother. But once we start speaking to the person, it's not at all a nursing home. They just need the supports in the home, whether it's home care, whether it's an adult day program, someone to come in the home. Sometimes people need help with getting the house cleaned, etc., going to shop.
Just matching the medications.
Absolutely. You know, it's the sort of services that everybody would need. And it's out there. We're available to help link. It's about connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
You have the need. There are services that are out there to help people with this.
Wow. So one phone call to 311 could potentially put you in touch with someone that could help you with a variety, even helping to clean the home?
Yes, exactly. And sometimes, frankly, even because we're seeing a lot of older spouse caregivers, their 70s, 80s, even 90s,
Right.
and they need help with the regular chores around the home. And so there is help that's out there for these sorts of things, to say nothing of the share the care, if you can get the neighbors. It is about the community, and it increasingly is taking that village, I think, to care for one another.
Well, Share the Care was born right here in New York City. So, you know, people don't think of New York as having a heart in that way, yet that's what happened.
You know, also, I just wanted to put out there, a lot of times people are thinking, how do you pay for these services?
Yes.
That's always a big, big issue. And people think, oh, well, we have Medicare, so we're good to go. All of our services will be covered. Medicare does not pay for long-term care services. It'll pay for the hospitalization. It may pay for 3 weeks, say, of rehab once you get out of the hospital in the community. But it's not the payer for the long-term care needs. This is where Medicaid steps in. And I guess everybody's been hearing about the difficulties that all of the states are experiencing in terms of their Medicaid budgets. And there's a lot of changes that are happening, sort of hard to keep track of it all. But the message here is just to know that it's not Medicare that pays for the long-term care.
So if people have questions, again, we're talking with Dr. Robin Fenley, the advisor to the partnership from the Department of Aging, NYC. You just call 311, you say, hey, I'm a caregiver, and I need some help.
That's it. Department for the Aging, give us a shout.
You're going to get an influx of calls. I know it. We've got a caller on the line. We have Diana giving us a call from Brooklyn. Diana, are you there?
Hi, I just want to congratulate you on your 50th anniversary.
Thank you.
Your show is wonderful. You bring the solution and the care and the love, and it just shines through.
We will send you a check.
Thank you. And thank you, Diana. It's callers and people like you, as well as we're meeting people. This is like a magnet here. And if you're listening and you know people who are doing good things within their community or organizations, give us a shout out, and we'll try to get you featured on the show.
And I also want to say that I'm a little bit reluctant to say this, but the truth of the matter is I was one of the people that was not there giving care because where my family was and where I was in the healing process, I was not able, and it would have probably destroyed me psychically, to go and do it at that part of my recovery from issues when I was growing up.
And that's real. That is, just because we have parents, it doesn't mean that we love our parents or that our parents loved us, in terms of our interactions growing up. And yet it's so interesting because, yes, sometimes people will say can't do it, and other times people will say can do it. And nobody should feel that they were less than because they couldn't. Because you know what? You have to take care of yourself.
That is so key.
But I want to say one quick thing before I hang up. I was very, very blessed in that I connected with my mother before she died, and we got to have very, very meaningful closure in that I got to thank her for so many things that she gave me, tell her I really wanted to be with her and hold her in my arms, and she was able to talk to me. And I have no regrets, and I'm sure she doesn't either. It was a ton of love, and I was very, very fortunate.
You know what? You just raised an
That's beautiful.
excellent point, because even though oftentimes we hear about caregiving being so difficult and burdensome, and there absolutely is that aspect, there's also just what you so wonderfully described. There is that real fulfillment, there is that connection, the intangible. So thank you for bringing that out. That's really, really an important point.
Yes, it's beautiful that you had that experience. I feel the same way about taking care of my mom when I did it alone. I would do it again tomorrow, but it was also tied in with you must take care of yourself, which caregivers must remember.
Because a lot of people are working.
They're
children.
working, but your own health, if you get ill, what happens to your loved one? Then it's not a good scene. But I do appreciate what you're saying and that experience of taking care of your mother, because that's a very unique relationship and it's beautiful.
I had to pull away to protect my own sanity, but we did have beautiful, healthy closure and love.
Good.
Do you, Diana, do you know anybody who is currently caring for an elderly relative or caring for a loved one?
No, personally, I don't right now.
Also, keep in mind any faith-based communities, because the faith-based communities use Share the Care to help the people involved in their community. So it's another resource in terms of finding people to be part of a Share the Care group.
Sheila made a very interesting point in terms of how fragile sometimes the caregiving relationship can be, particularly with older spouses. If you have one who is the identified caregiver and who's the care receiver, if the caregiver suddenly becomes ill, everything that's been established in terms of setting this family, we're going to stay in our home, we're all good to go, something happens to that caregiver, everything can fall apart. That happened in my family with my father. He was taking care of his wife, and then he got very, very ill. And everything then, it was moving into a long-term care facility because they couldn't stay. He, the caregiver, became ill, and they couldn't stay at home any longer.
So stressful.
On that note, I have a little story about a group in Colorado. I do trainings for health professionals to teach them about Share the Care so we can get the word out faster. And a social worker came to the training who had been caring for his wife with MS for like 20 years. And he said, I'm going to start a group. And they put together 80 people. Well,
that's a lot of care.
Yeah. Well, she was in a wheelchair, and it's a long story. But the following year, he ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks. But she had 80 people taking care of her. So he could rest easy and focus on getting better.
And you'd made a point earlier in terms of the coordination of the care. And you said that a lot of times the groups, you try to set it up so that it's not exactly the person that's ill or the closest family member that's coordinating all of the care.
No. Absolutely not. It's two people who will set up the initial meeting. And we have a set of principles.
Let's talk about them.
If I could just mention them very quickly, because these 7 principles are what keeps a group going and working together over time. And they work for anything. They could work for your own business. So very briefly, I'll just call them out here. And you got to think of this, again, as a group. Sharing responsibility is key to not burning out.
Absolutely.
Know your limits and stick to them. If you don't feel comfortable doing something, don't volunteer to do it or get put in that position. Mm-hmm. It won't work unless everyone gains something personally.
That's pretty interesting. What you'd think if you're providing care for someone, it's not about you.
The person you're caring for doesn't want to feel guilty that you're giving away. They want to know that you're getting something out of this experience, whether it's meeting new people, learning new things, or,
They don't want to feel like a burden.
Absolutely. So no matter what it is, you're going to get something. There's no one right way to do it. You get 12 people or 20 people in a room.
20 different ideas.
That's right. You got to pick one, agree to follow it, and if it doesn't work, you try somebody else's idea. Anyone who wants to help should be encouraged. That means little children, teens, put them to work, older people. Everybody has something to give. It's all going to be different, even if it's just sitting with someone and being company. That counts. Everything counts. Trust the group and support each other. By bonding together and working together at various points to solve certain things, our first group started out as strangers. By the end, we were like sisters. And we did something phenomenal for our friend Susan before she passed away. We organized her daughter's wedding. So
that is a big deal, and that is stressful.
We were really family. I remember the bride thanking her parents for this beautiful wedding and thanking all her other moms for making it possible.
Isn't that nice?
Keep your own life in good working order. I think we, just hit on that with your last call-in lady about she knew that she couldn't take on something, so
that was very brave of her to admit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know many people that would say, I'm not sure I rose to the challenge. That's
healthy.
Yes.
Yes.
Go Diana.
That's the great thing about today is that we're having this discussion, that we're guests on your show. It wasn't so many years ago when having cancer was like a hush-hush, kind of subject. Nobody talked about it. It was kind of hidden away. And
people are still reluctant, I think, to talk about their problems because they don't want to look, especially at work, with people you spend 12 hours a day with, in some cases, more.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They're afraid they're going to lose their job.
Well, this brings us to our call to action this week.
Yes.
We got off track for a while with some of the crazy shows we were having, but with this series, a call to action I think is important here for what you can do for the upcoming week, how you can make a difference, how you can improve in some way. And am I wrong? Are we ready to go here?
Ready to go.
I would say the New York City Partnership for Family Caregiving Corps, this army of people, is just sitting around available for you. They have a booklet of resources. And again, Dr. Fenley has also told us about 311. Call her up, tell her what you need. But they have a booklet that you can request that give it to somebody. Give it to somebody that you work with. Give it to somebody that you know is caring for a sick spouse. You call Kathy, 646-447-6285. 646-447-6285. Blow up her phone and get yourself the booklet. Get 20 booklets for your church group.
Pass it around.
Pass it around to help caregivers stay caregivers. So everybody knows that there's resources. Get Sheila's book, Share the Care, and organize a group. Again, if your church is looking for a way to help, if you've got a community of people who with hey, they've got time and they want to help, get the Share the Care book. We will put all this information in the show notes. But your call to action this week is to go to maybe your HR or go to someone you work with and offer them this booklet, offer them the resources that you've heard tonight. Again, 646-447-6285.
That's the phone number at Emblem.
That is the phone number at Emblem Health. And Kathy will send you a booklet or 50 to
wherever
you need to support a caregiver. So you're not alone. You're not overwhelmed going, how am I supposed to do this by myself? You're not.
And if you're not currently a caregiver directly taking care of someone, but you know someone who is, this is some good information that you can get to them and help them out.
Yes, this Family Caregiving Corps will come to your job. They will provide information. They will speak to your human resources. They'll give presentations. It's free. It's free. No one's selling you anything. No one's doing anything. They want to help you keep your job. So the caregiving is still your primary function that you're able to do.
Give you some ideas on how to function through this process.
And we want you to do that too.
I'd like to just throw in, sometimes people don't recognize who all the caregivers are. So a couple of populations are grandparents. You often don't think that grandparents are providing care, but in fact, I think it was the last census was showing that we had 85,000 grandparents that were raising their grandchildren in New York City. That's enormous. They've already raised their kids, and
They're
now,
tired.
You betcha. And now they've got their grandkids that they're raising.
Well, I'd like to thank our guests tonight, Dr. Robin Finley and Sheila Warnock, and of course, Melissa. This has been an excellent conversation. If you want to listen to this again, get information about this episode, it'll be in our show notes, the drfritzshow.com website. We'll also have links there to Emblem's website, as well as Sheila Warnock's website about her book. This is all good stuff. This is only the second in a series of 7 shows we're going to be doing, sponsored by Emblem Health, on family caregiving. This has been enormously helpful to me personally, but I'm hoping that this information gets to you and you're able to use it in your daily lives. Next week, we'll be back 10 o'clock. Peace.